Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 podcast. I am Joel A. Erickson. I am joined by Nathan Brown. This is Nathan's first chance to be a part of the First Impressions podcast. My understanding is he has a loose understanding of the categories. We will find out how he does. We'll see how he does on the First Impressions pod. Nat, our editor, Nat Newell, always made it a battle of who's going to win and who's not going to. That is not part of the original design of the First Impressions pod. It's more to try to focus things. Um, Realistically, big picture wise, there's not a ton to take away from this game. Um, this is a really really terrible Titans team, and the Colts did what they're supposed to do to really terrible Titans.
I think that's a great way to put it. We were talking earlier this week about thinking up ways that the Colts could find a way to lose this game on Sunday, whether it was a Daniel Jones injury or a multitude of turnovers or something else, really really fluky. And teams in the past, might have found ways to do some of those. Now maybe they wouldn't have lost the game entirely, but we just didn't see any of that out of this Colts team. That you could argue that this could have been some sort of a trap game. This home game against this terrible division opponent that you've just beaten by more than 20 points just a couple of weeks ago, and you've got a road game against the Steelers coming up here in a really tough second half of the season schedule. And the Colts just took care of business. Granted, maybe the first half didn't look great, but we say that and they still were up by 10 points. And never really felt like the game was out of their hands by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it's funny the way the perception around the Colts has changed a little bit, where they're up 17-7, and people are kind of like, "Well, man, what's wrong with this team? Were they taking them too lightly? Did they blow this?" Yeah, it's just kind of interesting to see how much things have changed. But that's what happens when you're 7-1. I think my favorite comment in Ask Joel this week was somebody who said, "What is going on with this defense? This reminds me of the Manning years when they had to score 30 points." And I was like, those were good years. I think most Colts fans would take a return to the Mannings. There's some stuff to worry about with the defense. We'll probably get into the categories, but yeah, the Colts are 7-1. They have the best record in football. They're going up against a Pittsburgh team that I don't know if anybody saw that game. I caught the fourth quarter of it, at least on the radio as I was driving home. Steelers are not good. They're not the normal Steelers defensively, and so that makes for a little bit of a different matchup, especially considering the Colts offense. We'll get to that later, though. We'll get to that on Wednesday. For now, it's the First Impressions pod. We always when we start this off, it's based on the result, and this year the result has been the same 7 out of 8 times. So we start with hero of the game. Nathan, who is your hero of the game for today's Colts win over the Titans?
I mean, I haven't done, admittedly, a whole lot of studying on the different categories for this pod, but this one seems like a no-brainer. I mean, it's Jonathan Taylor, 12 rushes, 153 yards on the ground, 21 yards through the air with an additional touchdown, 3 touchdowns in all, three for a team that scored 38 points. He was everything for this team tonight. I just finished writing up, you take away his 2 rushing scores of 80 yards, which came on the first play of the Colts offense in the second half, and his 18-yard scamper in the first quarter into the end zone. And he still averaged, I think, 5.5 yards a carry on those 10 other rushes. It was a performance where, he didn't really touch the ball a ton. He's a guy that leads the league in rushing attempts. He only rushed the ball 12 times today. Yes, he didn't play the final 7 minutes of the game today. But this was a game where every time he touched the ball, you felt like you were getting something really big. And that's something that I think is really important for this team. They don't have to feel like they have to rely on him like they maybe did in those, 2021 campaign where he, totaled more than 1,800 yards on the ground, but he was the Colts offense. He doesn't have to be that this year, and yet when he gets an opportunity, you feel like he's going to come through every time.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stuck out to me was just like all three of his touchdowns were just like otherworldly plays. Like none of
Yeah.
them was like a 1 yard plunge or anything like that. Like the first one, there's this really, really nice, and it's almost imperceptible when you watch the highlight. I think when I was watching it through the binoculars, though, I just noticed that he kind of like hesitates a little bit right behind Milan Fox to kind of force the linebacker to stay on the inside and then explode to the right. The 80-yard touchdown run, I don't know how he stayed down. He's 225, 250 pounds. He shouldn't be able to do that. Um, and then the last one, kind of a mix of people running through a tackle, speed, all of the normal running back things. Just he's just otherworldly right now. Very easy to go um, for your side of it. My hero of the game, I think, and this is something that I think maybe people wouldn't have thought I'd have. I think we keep giving this to him over and over again. Not you obviously, but Matt and I have been doing it. It's Daniel Jones. Like 21 to 29, 272 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Like it almost fit in the unsung hero of the game category because people were kind of like, why aren't they running JT more? But just I think that the play that stuck out to me was 3rd and 13. They just had a first down race by a holding penalty. They're up 24-7, so you don't necessarily have to go for it. They call something, and Shane Steichen just trusts him, and he goes up deep to Pierce for 50 yards and gives him a chance at the ball. It's just remarkable. And this is Nathan's first time on the beat. And we've been talking about what's different about this Colts team, and really it's the quarterback. you know, they had a lot of these pieces before, and I think Tyler Warren is a big one, and some of these young guys on the offensive line have helped, but they have a quarterback that can run the offense the way Shane Steichen wants them to. And I think in the interview with Jonathan Taylor, he was saying like, you know, one of the things that sticks out to him is just you can't key on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can't key on him the way you used to in 2021 because Jones will pick you apart passing wise. So hero of the game for me, Daniel Jones.
Yeah, I think it's a great one. I mean, he's there are a couple new components to this team on the offensive side of the ball this year, but when you have a new quarterback, and I mean, I think all of your skill position players are back. Yes, you've got some different guys outside of a rookie tight end in Tyler Warren and some changes on the offensive line, but the stark way in which this offense is different. I think a lot goes back to Daniel Jones and just the way that he is kind of this, for lack of a better phrase, the straw that stirs this drink. He brings out the best in so many of these guys with the way, the place he can put the ball, the smarts on the check downs that he makes and the plays that he moves to when he's given 2 or 3 in the huddle. And I think that's a great choice for this one as well.
That moves on to what is going to be a much tougher category for this one. This is the villain of the game. Your predecessor Nate Atkins, the villain of the game, always upset him. I don't know how you feel about it. It always bothered him.
I've got an interesting thought for it. I'll have you go first on this one and see if
so
we have the same answer.
Villain of the game, just for people who don't know, it's the idea is not that this is necessarily overtly evil from the whoever we pick for it. It could be the superhero movie villain where they think they're doing it. They're trying to do it well, but they don't, and it turns out bad. In this case, though, my villain of the game is just Mike McCoy from the Titans. We've had a lot of these now where we've had to get kind of creative with the villain of the game, but like 4th and 4-ish or something like that, near midfield, punt. Like, what are you doing? You're 1-6. you've been in the league a long time. You're probably not getting the head coaching job. Like, just go for it, man. Like, I just feel like they had one chance to maybe be in this game, and it was right around that time. He decided to punt there, and it just kind of felt like the Titans were rolling over and dying. Um, I get it. They're not anywhere near the Colts level. This was a game where you're looking at the number one team in DVOA versus the number 32 team in DVOA. Don't you have to try?
So McCoy was the who I was leaning towards there. I'll see if I can come up with another one. But I think everything you mentioned there is great, and then you have to follow it up with the fact that on the very next play after they punted, Jonathan Taylor ran for 80 yards and a touchdown, and this went from a 17-7 game to 24-7, and all of a sudden it was just like completely out of the Titans' hands. They had a small opportunity there. If you get that fourth down conversion and somehow you score a touchdown there, all of a sudden this is a 17-14 game, and I bet that arena starts to feel a little different, and you're starting to ask some questions. Now, I don't know that this Colts team would have ultimately buckled under that pressure, but that's just not like, what are you playing for other than maybe the GM and ownership, secretly hoping that you end up with a great draft pick next year, or just going for it and giving your guys a chance. It's not like they had a chance to go for it like on their own 25. They were right around midfield. I really didn't understand that, and the fact that you have Cam Ward walking off the field, mouthing, I would say, arguably yelling at his coach, saying "Go for it." I think makes that a pretty clear-cut call.
I'd forgotten about this, but before that one, that was on the 42, the Indianapolis 42, which that makes that call even more egregious. Like, goodness gracious. But before that, at the end of the first half, the Titans had 4th and 4 at the Indianapolis 48. I guess, no, you should go for that. I'm not even going to say that you should, like, you're trying to play against. The Colts can score. You're probably lucky that it's only 17 points at this point. You should have gone for that too. That's cool.
Yeah. I don't really know what the thinking was there, and I don't think either of us were in it, but it certainly seemed like there was quite a testy exchange back and forth, and in McCoy's post-game media availability with the Tennessee beat writers there back and forth. He got asked about the decision several times, and I don't know, tried to defend it. I don't really know that it made a whole lot of sense what his reasoning was there. But you're going to get some tough questions when you're 1-7 and kind of floundering, as you mentioned, the worst team in DVOA in the league, for an interim coach that is just a couple weeks on the job so far.
Did you come up with one for villain of the game?
I don't know that I have a specific person. I will say the general idea of the need to rest players when you are up by an insurmountable amount of points. Obviously, we know why. Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor and company got pulled with 7 minutes to go. I think this team is up by 20 or more points. I think when you start to think about the types of numbers that they could put up over the course of the season, and the opportunities that lie there. At this point, through 8 games, Jonathan Taylor has 850 rushing yards, on track to go for more than 1,800, on track to, I think, when you combine rushing and receiving touchdowns, track towards 30. When you're starting to lose, chunks of games, 6-7 minutes, a couple drives potentially, over these last few games, when they've been, putting up 30 or more points every single time, and the 4 or 5 times this year where they've won by, I think, 14 or more points, you're going to start losing some drives. And I think, the opportunity for these special seasons don't come around very often. Ultimately, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, Coach Shane Steichen talked after the game about how the fact that the Colts are yet to have a 100-yard receiver this year, and Michael Pittman sat 5 yards short of that. And Steichen even asked Pittman on the sideline with a couple minutes to go in the game on earlier this evening whether he wanted to go back in and get one more catch and hunt for that 5 yards, and he said no. And that's, I think it speaks a lot to this team and the lack of ego that you have. But from a selfish standpoint, if you weren't risking injuries, it would be really cool to see the numbers that Jonathan Taylor, I think most importantly, would be able to put up. And ultimately, when we're reflecting on what he does over the course of the 17-game season this year, there will be the caveat of the fact that he has and very well may continue to have some chunks of late game situations where he's not in the game, and he's not going to put up the numbers that he ultimately would have had he played all of those games. And I think he's on the course for a special season, and selfishly would like to see what all of that would have turned out to be.
That's an interesting one. There was some talk about that with Saquon Barkley last year, whether or not he should have gone for the record. I would bet that Colts fans are a little scarred by injury, and maybe are like, get him out as soon as makes.
I think that's totally fair.
Makes sense, but we'll move on now to unsung hero of the game. Who do you have for your unsung hero for today's Colts win?
Yeah, I mean, he's not getting talked about, but I think you saw in that one play where Alec Pierce goes up and nails a major 50-yard grab, where he just kind of goes up, boxes out the cornerback, and allows for a really big play and a third down conversion there for the Colts offense. He didn't have the score that Michael Pittman had, or Josh Downs had, or Jonathan Taylor had, those 3 touchdowns that Daniel Jones scored. But I mean, that I think just shows, or is kind of a window into just the different ways that this Colts offensive attack can beat you in so many different ways, and the ways in which it has so many different types of players that they can attack with. I think to, the drive extending catches that Michael Pittman made, or the incredible touchdown catch that he made where he had a cornerback draped over the top of him. And then you look at Alec Pierce and that play alone, he wasn't mentioned a ton of times in this game. Had some big catches early on, and then I think for whatever reason, just maybe didn't quite factor into things as we were getting, into the later stages of this game, maybe when Jonathan Taylor was taking over a little bit. But that play, when you have someone that has the capability of breaking the top off of the defense and muscling, against a member of the secondary, the opposing team, and hauling in a ball like that. And I think that shows a lot. And those guys are really key in an offense like this. You can't have, possession receivers at every single spot. You've got to have a guy like Pierce who can break it open for a big play like that. And that was a really big part of this game, I think.
Pierce so far this season, 386 yards in just games so far, because he missed 2 with a concussion. Wow. That's 64 yards per game, averaging 21.4 yards per game. It's an unbelievable deep threat. I think the thing that sticks out to me is, like, everyone knows he's going to go deep all game, and they're going to try to get it to him, and he still somehow finds a way to get one. My unsung hero, I'm going to go with Tanner Bortolini. And really, I could probably go with the entire offensive line here, but Bortolini specifically, Jonathan Taylor shouted out his athleticism, his ability to get out in space and make plays. We saw one. You got like a highlight moment where they ran a screen to Tyler Warren in this game. There's one Titan who could blow it up, essentially. They'd already had a screen blown up to Ashton Dulin earlier in the game. And Bortolini just hits another gear, picks the guy off of Warren. Warren ends up getting 20 yards on the screen. I think that, and just, making the call for line scrimmage in the run game, and then getting to the second level, getting a body on some of those guys who could maybe make Jonathan Taylor's life a little more difficult. go with Tanner Bortolini there at the center position.
It's a good one. Unsung villain of the game, our next category. What are you looking toward there?
This has kind of been a recurring theme in the unsung villain category, but it's just the edge rush needs to do more. The defense, I might be coming around after today's game. I still think the need is greater at corner, but you know, you could almost convince me the need is greater at edge rush. They get 4 sacks today. 3 of them are by defensive tackles. Half of them are by the nickel, and really, the play was created by Kenny Moore, not by Latu. He just kind of collected it. Only 2 quarterback hits from defensive ends all day today against Cam Ward. Like a guy like Cam Ward, normally your ends are the guys that you need to hit him because you need guys with some speed who can chase. Granted, Kwity Paye, Latu, Tuimoloau, those guys all playing a little more than usual because of injuries to Tyquan Lewis and Samson Ebukam. Just it's a bad Tennessee offensive line, and for this team to get to where it wants to go, and you got to start evaluating this team as a real contender in the AFC. The lack of edge rush is a significant problem. I actually think the interior rush is pretty good. Adabari's taking a step forward. Gallimore is starting to make plays. Grover Stewart, he's not an edge rusher. He's not like a burst explosive rusher, but he's made some plays as a guy who collapses the pocket. And then Buckner's the best rusher on the team. I actually think that the interior rush has been pretty good for the tackle position. It's those ends that it kind of feels like week in, week out, those guys need to be better. They need to win earlier.
Yeah, I think we've seen that the last 2 weeks. Whether it be against that Chargers offensive line that was down several either starter or starter caliber players, or this Titans team, with a line that's helped or at least played some sort of a role to this team ending up 1-6 and now 1-7. You just 4 sacks is not nothing, but you want to see these like overwhelming numbers against a team like this. And I just feel like, especially the way, the places that it came from and the plays and the ways some of those sacks today on Cam Ward came through, you just felt like that number should have been higher, particularly, whether it be against a rookie quarterback or a less than stellar team. And this was the group that had both of those.
Yeah, you could have gotten. I didn't feel like Ward was off his spot enough either.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you have for unsung villain?
I semi jokingly, really wish Joey Sly would have come through on that 58-yard field goal. Made this feel like it was a little bit more of a game going into halftime. Missed that one. We were joking on press row about how we always feel like we see him in those types of situations when the Colts are playing the Titans. That pushed that one a little bit right, I think, from 58. Yep. But you do wonder how this game might have felt a little bit different if it was 17-10 instead of 17-7. Certainly wonder if maybe Mike McCoy is getting a little bit more daring and going for a couple of those 4th downs to kick off that game before the game quickly got out of hand when Taylor broke that 80-yard rushing touchdown on the Colts' first play of offense in the second half. But I don't know. This game just never really felt like it was close, and not that 7 points would have necessarily changed that for me. But it would have been interesting to see how this team responded if this game was really even more so not going the way everyone predicted that it would have in that first half.
Yeah, it's interesting. This was a day, if you looked around the NFL, that there were not really any close games.
There's one single game that was decided by single digits, I think.
And that would have been Packers Steelers, I think.
Okay, so maybe 2. I guess it was. 2. I think it was 1. Yeah, Jets Bengals was maybe.
Jets Bengals. Yeah, they Jets, I think, won on a halfback pass.
They did.
Packers Steelers at the end of the day. But even that game, The Packers ended up having a big second half and kind of pulling away from it. That brings us to our number of the day category. We should almost name this the Nat Newell number of the day category since he's the one who looks up most of the numbers for us. But what's your number of the day from today's game?
Gonna go point back to number I referenced earlier in the pod, 5.5. Jonathan Taylor's average rushing yards outside of his 2 scores of the day. When you score on an 80-yard run, that's going to jack things up and kind of distort things a little bit. Jonathan's average rushing yards per carry today was 12.8, and obviously he wasn't getting very close to that on nearly all of his touches, but just continue to be amazed at the production that we see from him just about every single time he touches the ball. I think over the course of the first 8 games this season, that 5.5 is actually a little bit under his average for the year through 8 games. I think it's at 5.9 yards, if I remember correctly, looking at things earlier tonight.
That's right.
Completion of today's game. So, I mean, even 5.5, like outside of those 2 big plays, you've got a guy that's still averaging more than 5 yards a carry. I just think is really, really points to how productive he can be, just on a random second or first down, no matter the situation, no matter where the Colts are on the field. I think it's when you have a guy that you just can almost certainly bet is going to get you 4, 5, 6 yards every single time he touches the ball. It just makes such a difference for an offense to just have that freedom to have the front 7 and the secondary on its toes, knowing, hey, we've got to bring a bunch of reinforcements up here to try and make sure that doesn't happen. And then when you've got that, then that opens up the passing game and things kind of just snowball from there.
My number is 8.1. That's the number of yards per play Colts had today. And that includes I think 2 series with Riley Leonard at quarterback, in which he didn't complete a pass. And they still ended up with 8.1 yards per play. The funniest thing to me about that is that this is a day that a lot of people felt like was kind of a weekday for the Colts offense. If your weekday is 8.1 yards per play, you're never going to lose again. That's a great number for yards per play. It's just kind of encapsulating just how insane this offense has been.
That's a good one.
Next up, this is where we get to the interlude. These are sort of the fun. These are more of the fun type of categories. Game day observation is the first one. Game day observation. Do you have a game day observation today? How many Colts games have you been to? You've been on IndyCar for a while.
So I'm almost certain that this was actually the first Colts game that I have covered since I've been at the Star. I have been to two, maybe 3 Colts games otherwise in my life. Those were all wearing a Dolphins jersey as a born and bred Dolphins fan when the Miami came to town over the course of my younger years. But this is my first covering the Colts. So fun fact, I actually covered the very first athletic event played at Lucas Oil Stadium. It was a Noblesville Fishers high school football game in the fall of 2009 before the Colts broke in the arena a couple weeks later. So got a long history here, but this was my first Colts game as a member of the accredited media. Observation for me, again, something that I wrote about today, the fact that we're hearing, these MVP chants, every single time Jonathan Taylor scored today, and the fact that they don't feel misplaced. You hear that type of stuff at NBA games. I feel like once we get into December or January when a guy's on a heater, but it's not oftentimes not for someone who is actually realistically going to factor into the MVP race. And this is just, I think, the fact that we, haven't heard it this season until today. It just feels like it's, kind of rounding into a story where this could very well be a legitimate conversation. I'm interested to see what some of the takes on the hot take shows across the sports world are tomorrow. But I think this is a genuinely real conversation when you think of the Colts being, at least from a record standpoint. Again, you can talk about the folks that they have played and how they have gotten to these 7 wins through 8 weeks this year, but they are playing like the best team in the NFL, and Jonathan Taylor is the best player on that football team. We talk a lot once we get down toward the end of professional sports seasons that most of the time, the best player on the best team is the one that ends up with that award. Now, not all the time. The quarterbacks in the NFL have won it, I think the last at least 12 years. So a running back getting it alone would be quite a big sea change. I think it's only happened 3 times in the last 2 decades. The last of those being Adrian Peterson in 2012 when he eclipsed 2,000 rushing yards in 16 games. But I think that will be a cool conversation to follow and track, and we'll see where that all ends up shaking out once we get through 17 regular season games this year.
Yeah, interesting to see. I'm like this with a lot of big awards. I don't love that it's only the quarterbacks.
Agreed.
For the MVP, I feel the same way about the Heisman. Those MVP chants are interesting, and I'll be interested to see, because the last time they talked about this, the Colts were kind of coming back from being, a bad start, and so they weren't, so far out the best team in the NFL. Right now, at least, they're 7-1. I think that could definitely help. I also feel like so far from what I've seen, it's kind of a weaker class.
Mm-hmm.
But as Shane Steichen said today, that all changes in November and December. I want to make mine about the roof, but podcast listeners are probably tired of hearing that I want the roof open, because basically none of them really want the roof open, especially on a day like today, with the sun going down and everything like that. I am from Wisconsin, and I have thoughts about the way football should be played, and I'll just hint at them today instead of going full bore. I think my other game day observation is just today was the salute to service one. I wear the salute. I don't usually wear all the pins for like all the NFL stuff, but I wear the salute to service pin because I have a good friend who is currently deployed with the Army. Can't say where, but just kind of a nod to him. And it's neat. You think about that stuff as, oh, this is whatever, people are doing that, but I know if you're deployed and you see that kind of stuff, that it actually matters a little bit.
Yeah, it's a cool ceremony to kick off the game today. With in those moments, I think certainly I know for you and for me too, and I'm sure folks around the stadium, like for a second, we come in, we're talking about football pregame, we're looking at stat sheets, we're thinking about storylines, but there are moments before that game kicked off that you realize that there are a lot more important things than an NFL football game. And I think those moments are really important to have us kind of center things and focus on what's really important. And I hope and wish we had more of those, to be honest.
That brings us to my category. Nate kind of had his own twist on this. I think you kind of have to figure yours out here. Nate's, I do 3 football things that gave me joy from the game. Nate's was 3 football things that left him terribly vexed. I'll let you kind of find out if you want to do it. For the moment, Nat didn't usually have anything in this category. My number 1 football thing that gives me joy. This is an ongoing one. I think it's so funny that teams throw bubble screens and quicks to Kenny Moore's side. It's every single year they do this, and like it just feels I just don't understand it. You're throwing it to the side with a slot cornerback who's kind of made his living off of being physical at the point of attack and playing like a linebacker. And they tried it twice today. It didn't work either time. It tickles me. It tickles me to no end. I think it's hilarious. Uh, yeah. Number two football thing that gave me joy. It didn't work, but I like the idea. Early in the first drive, they lined up in the same formation that they run the halfback ISO out of, where you put Tyler Warren at fullback in the offset eye, and then he leads for Jonathan Taylor. This time, they leaked him out of the backfield on a sail route like the one they hit against Denver. And the only thing that kept it from being completion was that Daniel Jones was a little bit high. Tyler Warren probably should have caught it. I'd have to look at it again to see if it was like if I would classify it as a full drop. But the result of the play did not affect it for me. You ran a fullback deep out of a play that you absolutely torched this team with last time. I love as listeners of the pod know, I love all old school fullback stuff, and so yeah, really like the idea of that and using it. Very frustrated, or the only minorly taken a piece off of it by it not working. And then the number three football thing that gave me joy. Ashton Dulin was back at gunner. He is a free. Ashton Dulin and Rigoberto Sanchez end up being frequent occupants in football things that give me joy. I think famously now that Brian Mason called me out on a teleconference that I'm known as the person who pays attention to special teams. Ashton Dulin had 2 gunner reps today where he was basically standing there talking to the punt returner as they catch the ball. I love good gunner play. Ashton Dulin's one of the best in the league. Good to have him back.
That kind of dovetails into mine. This is by no means a statement of I don't know. I'm not sure what the right word is for this. So I'll just say this. I love watching those two, Doolin and Sanchez, on the punt team. I think they do incredible stuff. We don't get to see them very often, to be fair. And so maybe that makes it even more enjoyable when we do actually get to see that the Colts have a punter on their roster. I, for one, when we see a kicker attempt a field goal close to 60 yards. I just wish we got to see those more. I think there's not a whole lot of suspense when you're seeing a guy kick from 30 or 40 yards. There's not a whole lot of novelty in that. I just love the idea anytime there's an opportunity for a field goal over 60 yards. And again, this was 58 and it was fairly wide right. It really wasn't all that close from Joey slide there to close to the end of the first half. But I love the idea of getting chances to see long field goals. It feels like we're starting to see more of those attempts in the NFL nowadays, but I just think there's some cool suspense that can't really compare to anything else on the field when you're seeing, does this guy have the leg to kick it through the uprights from 63, 65 yards? And I enjoy watching those, the few opportunities that we get. Number two, Jonathan Taylor referred to it in his media scrum that we did with him post-game today. Tanner Bertolini had one hell of a block on Jonathan Taylor's, I think it was his first touchdown run there. And it was one of those like bang, bang, split second plays that, just the offense right there is just moving absolutely perfectly. If it happens any differently, Jonathan, maybe he gets tackled right there at the point of that block, or maybe he just gets slowed up and doesn't score at all. That play just from both of those guys, but I think Bortolini especially, just the timing and the way in which he leveled that block, and the way that JT waited for that hole was really impressive, and stood out to me. And then going to my third one, anytime we see a player like Jonathan Taylor, as you mentioned, close to 230 pounds, tiptoeing on the sideline where he's like legitimately off balance. The member of the Titans secondary, I mean, I don't know if both of his feet left the ground, but I think it's safe to say like dove with all of his weight at Jonathan Taylor as he's running, in a probably you would say a straight line down the sideline. And the fact that JT was able to keep his balance and tiptoe when he was already running probably within 6 inches to a foot of the out of bounds line there, and make it all the way for 80 yards. I just can't imagine the strength and the speed and the brute force it takes to be able to do something like that. And I know it. Shane Steichen was talking about it post game about how someone on his on the radio was talking to him saying maybe second guessing, if you will, if that was actually good, if JT actually didn't step out of bounds. And Shane said, because I think Jonathan ran within a foot or two of him, said, yes, that was good, easy. You could just tell how much he was marveling in the way in which Jonathan Taylor was able to execute on that play, and I thought it deserved a little bit more appreciation.
I like this. I like that you are going with also football things that give you joy. This is a fun game, and I know that the NFL is serious business and people get really into it, and I get that. I appreciate that. It keeps both of us employed. I love it very much. But also, this is fun. Let's do some joy. I got a bonus that just came to me. DeForest Buckner's swim move is great.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's tall, but it's fantastic. He's had big sacks on it the last couple weeks. So DeForest Buckner's swim move was the other one. Now we move into the part of the podcast where we get to some of the more serious, or I don't know, the more big picture type stuff. We start out with too much. Again, this one can go. This category can go either way. It can be too much credit or too much blame, but we don't have any blame when the team wins 38-14. It's only credit. So too much. Who's getting? We'll start with too little credit. Who is getting too little credit for today's win?
I think the offensive line, Colts offensive line. I mean, it's a really easy thing when a running back has a game like that. You just kind of all of a sudden you gravitate to the play caller, or the quarterback, or most of the time the running back, just for executing the runs. But there's so much that goes into the performance that Jonathan Taylor put in today with those 12 rushes for 153 yards and 2 scores on the ground. Even just an 80-yard rush like that. I mean, you go back and you rewatch that play alone there. He runs through, I think the first probably like 5 to 10 yards of that play, he runs through 3 different holes where he goes completely untouched. Now that a big chunk of that is Taylor, spotting those holes, hitting them just the right way, just the right time, just the right speed, at just the right angle. But the players that are leveling those blocks and sealing them so that he goes through there completely untouched, without them, that play does not happen like that. And I think we don't talk enough about offensive line playing, great blocking, great sealing, and I think that offensive line there deserves a lot of love today too.
Yeah, they really do deserve a lot of credit for the season too. My too little credit is just, I already telegraphed this, but the defensive tackles. It's the defensive tackles with a Buckner good again. Anytime Adebawore has really taken a huge step forward here in his 3rd season. It's a step forward that I don't think you could have predicted him taking after the way his first couple seasons went. He really only played 100 snaps or so on both of his defensive snaps in both of his seasons before this. He can play special teams. That's great, but I don't know that you look for it from defensive tackle. And then Grover Stewart with a handful of really important run stops. There was a 41-yard run by Tyjae Spears, and that makes the rushing numbers look bad. But that's kind of the edge guys. That's not It was a pitch around the edge. It's not the same as going up the middle. I just think the Colts defensive tackle is probably playing better than we realize, and just not getting enough help from the edge. That's my too much credit. Nathan, who's getting too much credit for today's Colts win?
Too much credit.
This one might be tough today.
Yeah. Because I feel like we talked a lot. I don't know. Do you have one on the top of your head? If you do, you go ahead and I can think on this a little bit longer. This one's
my too much credit is the Colts turnover streak. They've got a turnover in every game this year, I believe. They got one at the end with Chris Lamons picking off that pass in the end zone. I would feel better about the turnover. I would feel better about that interception and the turnover streak if they had more than 4 pass breakups on the day.
Fair.
So yeah, my too much credit is just going to be the turnover streak, or the turnover today more than anything, not the turnover streak in general, because I do think that's how this defense is going to have to play for a little while. Is they're going to have to make the big plays and make those interceptions. But today, realistically, when Lamons made that pick to keep the streak alive, this thing was all done by then. It just kept some points off the board.
Sure. I'll go just a little bit bigger picture, extend a little bit beyond just today's game. But I think the shall we say, less than stellar performing opponents that the Colts have faced this year, Titans included,
I like that.
Twice, are getting a little bit too much credit about where this team is in the pantheon of this NFL landscape. This ultimately, you played 8 games. Yes, they have played some less than stellar teams. They played the Titans twice. They beat up on the Raiders. There are a couple other games in there that really stand out. That game against the Miami Dolphins, certainly winning handily at home to kick off the year. But when it comes down to it, those games almost entirely were not easy wins. I think if this Colts team was winning a lot of one possession games and letting teams like this Titans group, hang around until the fourth quarter or midway through the game, or having to really kind of press in these late game situations, I think that's where you get into the position where you can start to question whether this 7-1 record is real. We just haven't seen that. Yes, the Colts have played in some close games. We can talk, and I'm sure you guys have a lot about how and why the games against the Broncos and the Rams went the way that they did, and they could have probably flip-flopped and this team still would be 7-1. But by and large, the Colts have won handily games that they should win if you are going to be a 7-1 team. When it comes down to it, you've got to play the teams that are on your schedule. And they have not only won 7 of their 8 games, but most of them they have won handily. And I think that's all you can ask for, again, with a good team playing a crummy one. And so I think this idea that we should just automatically discount what the Colts have done so far through nearly the first half of the year, just because of some of the teams that they have played, when we're not considering the fact that, they're handily leading the league in points scored per game, really high up there. I think they've got the highest differential too. And there's, all these other categories.
By a long shot. Yeah.
Yes. You can just ultimately they can't do anything with the teams that they are facing. They've just got to beat them as handily as possible, and they're doing that. And so I think we'll find out over this next month or so exactly what this Colts team is made up of. I think probably starting with this road game against the Steelers coming up here next Sunday, along with games, on the road against the Jaguars and against the Chiefs. An international game to Berlin, no matter who you're playing, is going to be a good, tough test. So, but I think for now, any of this talk about trying to discount what these Colts have done just because of who they've played and kind of what this team has been for the better part of the last decade, I feel like kind of misses the mark a little bit.
That one almost could have gone for this next category, which is one to throw away, something people are talking about now that we can throw away for the rest of it. Just to back up, though, what you're saying about the point differential. The Colts' point differential is currently 116 plus 116. Nobody else is over 70. That is crazy.
Yeah.
That is a wild statistic.
Yeah. I mean, when your only loss comes by 7 points and you've scored at least 30 in each of the last 4, and I think 5 or 6 of your 7 wins have come by at least 14 points, that will do that.
That'll do that. My one to throw away, I'll give you some time to kind of figure out what you want to do there. My one to throw away is this idea that the Colts need to ground and pound. I don't know if many people are saying this, but it seems like there still is a little bit of a tendency to think along these lines. This is not that team. This is not 2021. We're not there. This is a team that can throw the ball. I mean, in a different game, maybe you feel like they should have run Jonathan Taylor more because it was so successful early on. In a game against the Titans that you're going to win 38-14, if he only gets 12 carries, I think if I'm the Colts, I feel like, hey, we got 150 yards out of JT, and we didn't have to ride him the way we might have to later in the season because, like, in that close game against the Broncos, he had 25 carries. They didn't have to do that. They're averaging 8.5 yards per attempt. They've only given up 9 sacks. Daniel Jones has a 109.5 rating this season. They just don't need to. They don't need to force the run. And just because you decide to throw some more and maybe it doesn't look exactly the way you want it to, that doesn't necessarily mean that the process is bad and should be thrown out. This team can throw the ball. They can run the ball too, but they can throw the ball. And it's time to start looking at them like that.
I think for my pick here, the idea that the I'm trying to think of the phrase here, the deciding line on whether a receiver has had a really big game being 100 yards. Like I know we like to talk about numbers, and the idea of getting to 100 just is nice and round and easy to kind of think of and conceptualize. But Michael Pittman, had he gone in and caught one more ball for 5 yards, would have had no greater a game today than he did with 8 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown. And I think frankly, it's remarkable that the Colts have had, they put up the yards and the points that they've had, and not still yet had a 100-yard receiver in a single game through 8 games this season. I think coming in here, obviously Pittman is a repeat, but I think they had 5 different guys through 7 games and now 5 through 8. Different players lead them in receiving yards so far this season. They've got just such a deep group there, so much so that again, we've talked about him a lot before. AD Mitchell did not catch a single ball today. Probably one of their most physically gifted guys on that receiving core, second-year receiver on the team, who we know what he's gone through over the last month or so. Don't need to rehash it, but the fact that you can go 8 games with the top offense in the league and not have anyone reach 100 receiving yards in a single game, and a guy like AD Mitchell just not factoring into the game plan at all the last month and it not really mattering, I think is a testament to the fact that you can have an incredibly threatening receiver lineup and not necessarily need to have guys just gobbling up yards for it to be a good game.
That's good. That leads us to the last category. This is one to go on. This is why this is the last category, because we're trying to leave you with the thing that you should be thinking about going forward. What's one to go on? Something people are talking about right now after this game that we're going to be talking about the rest of the season.
I think whether he was trying to or not, I feel like Shane Steichen really set the stage for what these next 2 months of the season are going to be like. He said, putting up stats and wins and what have you in September and October is impressive. And he wasn't trying to discount what the Colts done through 8 games this year, but ultimately the best teams in football are decided and shown through what you do in November and December. I don't kind of summarizing what his quote was, but I think what he says there is very true. And I think ultimately the way in which the Colts' schedule kind of mirrors that really well, quite frankly. You've got this road test coming up against the Steelers. You've got a trip to Berlin, followed by a bye week. And then what I think very well could flex into a primetime game on the road against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Not to mention road games against Jacksonville and the Seahawks and another game against Jacksonville. I mean, this is a jam-packed second half of the year, and we're going to learn a lot about this team and ultimately, how we remember this team isn't going to be the way in which they won, a week 8 game against the Titans this year, or how they snuck one out against the Broncos a couple weeks into the season. It's going to be how this team performs in November and December. And I think just the way in which this first half, second half kind of turns the page, frankly, starting tomorrow as the team focuses forward on Pittsburgh, I think is a good way to look at where this team is headed.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. The way a season ends matters. Colts fans have learned this better than anybody over the last. I think that the biggest thing is teams that start 7-1, like the Colts are going to the playoffs, barring some catastrophic injury situation. The Colts are going to the playoffs, so that they have done that. That is in itself a milestone for this franchise. But you're right. How they finish the season, how the rest of the season looks, it's going to be decided here in the last 9 games of the season. My one to go on, I think Jonathan Taylor is underrated. I said this in our post game video, not by you, the Colts fan who is listening to this, but by the national media who sometimes doesn't put him in the list of the top backs in the NFL. Sometimes kind of forgets about him when they're talking about the best players in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor is already close to 7,000 yards in his first 6 seasons in the NFL. He has a whole another half a season to play. And I think if the Colts continue to play like this, the way Taylor's playing, the way they're blocking, I think that as we get down the stretch here, people will start to realize, wait, this is the second time we're talking about Jonathan Taylor as a running back in the MVP conversation. And that really means something. That doesn't happen with many backs.
And for 4 years separated, like that's a lot of running backs' entire careers is 4 years.
And I just think that we'll see what the national discussion is. I did notice that on the SportsCenter highlight package, Taylor was the one that they were talking about with the Colts going into it. I just think that as this season goes on, people are going to start realizing, like, wait a minute, this guy isn't just like a novelty who had one great season in Indianapolis, which is kind of how they treat him. I think they're going to start realizing that this guy he's on the level of Saquon Barkley or Derrick Henry or really those types of guys, and has been all along. I think he just played on some teams that did make the playoffs. So that's where I think that's what I think one of the conversation pieces. As long as he doesn't get hurt again, I think that's what the conversation is going to be around Taylor.
Yeah, I mean he's probably very well could be a game away from eclipsing 1,000 yards for the 4th time in his 6-year career. And really, when you look at it, again, you can't just completely throw away injuries, but if not for a couple ankle injuries in back-to-back seasons in 2022 and 2023, Jonathan Taylor would be probably 6 for 6 in that category. And when you look at how fast great running backs in this league can just tail off, and the fact that when some of those injuries happen, a lot of these guys we just don't really hear from ever again because teams are so quick to burn through running backs and then just either go draft a new one or patch together a backfield with some of the few veterans that remain in this league. I mean, Jonathan, the fact that he is still doing this 6 years into his career is not something that should go overlooked.
Yep. So that's where we'll leave you. Steelers week coming up, second half of the schedule coming up. Jonathan Taylor is great for the Indy Star. I'm Joel A. Erickson. This is Nathan Brown. Please like and subscribe. Forgot to say that at the beginning of the video. I'm not great at this. I'm not great at saying please like and subscribe. You might have to remember for me.
It was also 1:30 in the morning, so I feel like you got a little bit of forgiveness there.
That's true, but I also do it on Wednesdays too. So, got to own that one. Got to go back, watch the tape, make corrections. Jonathan Taylor's great. Everybody have a good week.
Thanks, guys.